I occasionally have brain farts and tongue twisters.
Oh, that's fine. English is my second language too, so it's okay. I'm supposed to be speaking Malay as our national language, but like I didn't learn it in school. So that was the strangest thing. But you grew up in Belgium.
Yeah, so my first language is Flemish. My second is
Sorry,
French.
did you say Flemish?
Flemish? No, not Flam, but Flemish.
What's Flemish? What in the world's Flemish?
It's the better version from Dutch. So it's same as Dutch, 80% similar. It's like Spanish versus Mexican.
Right, but you still got to speak French.
Yes. And then English is my third. German is my fourth. Spanish is my fifth.
And you've learned all of them.
Yeah. But several of them are completely out of practice. So Flemish is awkward for me now. So I had lunch with a Flemish guy like on Monday. And just in the middle of the conversation, I would just automatically flip to English. And it's like, oh, so sorry, my Flemish is like so super rusty. You can come take my passport.
How long have you not practiced it?
Well, I don't speak it with Amp. I don't speak it with my daughter. My social network is all English, so I use Flemish maybe 0.5% of my time.
I would have thought that you would have like spoken to your daughter about that.
No, he never did.
What a shame. Well, there's no... I don't know if there's school for Flemish here in Singapore, but that should be quite interesting if there were. Maybe you could start one.
I can start it.
Besides, who would say it was really great? It's like at that standard.
Nobody would know. It sounds awesome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live here at the Epic Podcast. Welcome to Edric Poon and Company. And right now we're talking to Bert. All right, and Bert, he is an innovation enthusiast and innovation, or dare I say, innovation expert. He's also a serial entrepreneur, a health enthusiast, Ironman, I don't know, muscles from Brussels are already taken. So I don't know, Bert, the Ironman Grobben, I don't know if that works for you.
It works.
Okay, great. So thanks so much for making time to come onto this podcast and just, speak with me, teach me, enlighten me with a lot of stuff.
Oh, I'm not here to teach. I'm just here to share whatever questions you have for me. It's always been a journey of learning, always been a journey of studying. So thanks for having me.
You've got a crazy resume, right? Like first of all, you're the CEO of Budding Innovations. You're the Chief Business Officer of Revivo. Revivo, I'm sorry. Yeah, and you're also an adjunct lecturer. You're also on the board. I don't know what else is in your plate and how you still make time to train for your Ironmans, but it's pretty crazy. How do you even have a social life?
Oh, that's my Ironman stuff. That's all the stuff I do with the local communities. And look, I do a lot of things because first of all, I enjoy myself every day, right? I do what I love. So part of my work and some of the things I don't regard as work, right? All my startup interactions, all my teachings, interacting with young talents, for me, that doesn't feel like work. It feels like social life. It's just an extension of professional life.
Wow, so awesome. I mean, it's great that you are able to be in the moment for each one and not be worried about the next step, but just be like, yeah, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it right now and truly enjoy that. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Budding Innovations. I think this is an awesome thing, but you'd be the most eloquent to talk about it.
Yeah, well, Budding Innovation is a brainchild that has been 48 years in the making, right, to some extent. Because when we started, Andre and myself, my German co-founder, it was literally an extension of the passion we had for innovation. It was also an answer to the frustrations that we had when we were in our last corporate jobs. But it's also a reflection of, at least if I speak for myself, who I've been since I was a kid, when I was in university, how I behaved in my corporate innovation roles, right? And Budding Innovation is literally this idea on how do we bring the best of innovation out of people, out of organizations, out of companies, whether you're a big Fortune 500, whether you're a regional hero, whether you're a startup, scale up or early stage, or even if you're a professor or a principal investigator in an institution. The idea behind BI is how do we bring expertise, how do we bring networks, and how do we bring guidance and support to those people that kind of need it and can use it to be able to take their innovations to the next level.
Really cool stuff. it's so interesting that you're bringing all of this, but I want to know why you did this. Like it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to bring this together, I'm going to bring that together, and we're going to do something. But there's always something about innovation that kind of makes your fingers go, whets your appetite. What is it?
It's very hard to say because I've been doing this since I was a kid. It's in my DNA. Right?
What do you mean you've been doing this since you were a kid?
Well, in a way, if I look at who I was when I was, let's say, 6 to 10 years old, I'd be out in the forest. Look, these are the days that we didn't live in cities. Like across the street from where I lived, there was literally forest, and you could get lost for hours and hours. So that's where we would be, building forts and constructing things with my friends. And we had role-playing games, and all of that was in the spirit of creating something new and building and pushing boundaries to some extent. It went then to high school, where during recess time, I was the geeky kid that would use my recess time to go sit in the lab to support the science professor coming up with new experiments. He would give me, back in the days, homework to come up with new experiments that he could use to showcase certain physical principles, chemical principles. That's how I would spend my time. That went all the way down to university. When I was doing my bachelor, the first set that I did is I used to spend my summer holidays back in the lab, because there was a time where I had a challenge, because one of my close connections was how do you say it in English? He was a beekeeper. Mm-hmm. And as a beekeeper, he had a very expensive part, which is the queen bee. And he wanted to innovate by getting the hive ready to implant a queen bee. But for that, he needed to have the pheromone. So I said, I want to be a chemist later, so I'll make you that pheromone. So I spent my summer holidays trying to do organic synthesis and trying to figure out how to synthesize that pheromone. I synthesized many different things, but not that pheromone. So I wasn't successful. But it was this journey of putting different things together, taking a challenge, trying to find solutions, and just going all in and trying to figure out ways to do that. And that was just one step after the next, after the next, after the next. Even in my PhD work, I didn't do research for the sake of research. I always had to make this like a project. I always had to make this into an industry collaboration thing, and bring industry partners together, hospitals together, fellow collaborators from local and overseas, to back in the days, until the annoyment of my professor, because he was like, just do your research. I was like, yeah, but I'm doing research. I'm just making it bigger and industry relevant and just bringing connections and expertise together. So I've always done this. So when I ended up in the industry with Procter & Gamble first, for about 13 years, and then Avery Dennison for about 2. The best thing that could have ever happened to me is end up in open innovation roles, because open innovation is exactly that, trying to understand what are the big problems that the billion-dollar brands are addressing, trying to see what success looks like on the internal side, but then reframe success by bringing in external innovation potential, right? And really, again, bringing people together. It's almost like bring the cat to the milk and really see how you then build for success. With P&G, that was a wonderful learning job. So I had 13 years of first category work. So I did my hands-on work in consumer research, trying to understand what is innovation, what is meaningful innovation first for everyday's consumer, right? Because if you can't understand what is meaningful for the people that actually buy your product, then what are you innovating for? So really understanding the consumer language is super critical. And then finding out how do you translate that non-obvious but delightful need for innovation into a technical brief, into a commercial brief, and how do you bring people together in making that happen? Doing that for about 12 years, kind of that made it the next step to go into open innovation and really be the person that tries to connect the internal needs with the external potential. And that's where BI came from, right? So I've always had this drive, don't know where it comes from. It is my DNA. Maybe it's the air that I did breathe and the water that I drank when I was a young kid. But that's what I wanted to do, just bring things together. And with BI, we try to transform the way corporates do it on the internal side, because we notice that there's always a gap between big and small, big corporate and small startup. And it's not because they're not meant to work together. We always say men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And to some extent, I believe in that for corporates and startups just as well. It's just a different maturity stage. It's a different risk environment. It's a different level of QA, QC. There's so many different things that are different, but you just need to curate for individual opportunities to find themselves at the crossroads. And that's where we sit, right? And I couldn't do that. And my co-founder, Andre, we couldn't do that when we were within the corporate walls. But because we're now external and we do this as an independent agency, it gives us the freedom to think big, to dream, to see opportunities, and without overhead, just try to bring the different parties together. So our biggest work is dream big with corporates. Right? We try to imagine what does their 15, 20 years outward innovation look like. That's what we call future-scaping. That's what we're good at, trying to, I'm not going to say predict the future, because predicting is a bit, trying to put too much weight on the actual solution, but it's trying to paint a picture of what the future might look like. That could be multiple pictures of the same future, but different iterations thereof. And then from that, we work our way back and say, like, well, to be able to paint this picture, bring it to life, what needs to be true today, tomorrow, next year, the year after, until we're in 2030, until we're in 2040. And that being said, that is what we do for the corporate. We help them see what that looks like. But that also gives us that time frame to then work with early stage startups, because something that is very immature and very early stage today will find its point of maturity in the future. But if you're very immature today, talking to a very mature partner, there is a disconnect, right? And that's why we work with the partners first, to build that relationship of trust, to envision and to visualize what that future looks like. And then along the way, we keep on working with these earlier stage opportunities to find the point of intersection when we can make the connection and then really build together. So
right.
That's what we do at BI.
And what has been those, let's just say, for example, what has come across your table recently that you went, oh, I really want to work on this one?
Well, there's so many things. There's something every day. That's why we don't sleep, right? There's so much cool stuff. and it goes from, call it the lab sciencey things for...
What's that?
The future of, for example, synthetic biology, alternative manufacturing, right? The future of alternative proteins, the future of manufacturing...
What? Manufacturing human skin for grafting?
It could be, but it could be bioactive ingredients for better nutrition. It could be moving from... animal-based ingredients to alternative sourced, maybe not plant-based, maybe it's synthetically manufactured with synthetic biology. It's just that the future has so many wonderful opportunities that are more sustainable, that are more diverse, that are more enabling, and that might actually lead to better democratizing of nutrition around the world for people that don't have access to nutrition. If you look at the way the world is changing before our eyes, we just need to make sure that we keep that in mind as we drive different solutions for nutrition, as it is for wellness, as it is for health in general, as it is for sustainability. And that's where we need to make sure that as we push forward, we pull solutions from that back of everything that's available and push ahead with the best possible solution. So that's what I meant by lab ideas, right? It's synthetic biology is started in the lab with putting different ideas together and then scaling it up. The other side that I find super amazing is metaversing, which is this future of digital twins and everything that sits around that, and how you create different experiences that in the absence of a digital layer today are very difficult to achieve. But what does the future of digital world, physical world look like? How do you create different experiences? How do you create new social tribes? How do you create the future of health by creating a whole different kind of interaction? And that's, again, one of the other things that we find very exciting.
But that's the thing, right? The whole metaverse thing was at a peak, at a real high, and now it's kind of like going down, and people are already starting to doubt Meta, which is quite interesting because they are the first movers in this particular space. Eventually, it's going to get smaller and smaller and more concise. I'm just wondering how you're able to ride that trend, thinking and supporting other businesses in this particular area.
Well, first of all, Meta doesn't equal metaverse, right? As much as Meta doesn't equal everything that is blockchain or functionality.
Right.
And the hype that we see, and to some extent the less than legal habits that we do come across, that doesn't equal the rest of the industry, right? So there is really tremendous functional projects out there that are set to change the way we experience the world. Right, so that's why I would say, would Meta be the only company in the future that owns the domain? I wouldn't think so. Right? Quite often we see that the industry leaders, they kind of set the trend, they kind of set the tone for a while, but then there's a whole host of other companies that get inspired and kind of join the journey. Would we see a temporary backdrop in the excitement? I would expect so, because it's still a quite unregulated space. And in the absence of regulation and rules that everybody has to adhere to, then you would see fluctuation. I think a lot of the ups and downs now are simply because the rules of the game aren't exactly set and clear. But once they come into play, then I think we'll continue to see very significant growth in a space that is not necessarily the current vision that Meta portrays. But it's an industry where we would expect augmentation of our human limited experiences and abilities and our senses.
Right.
How do we bring other functionalities and tools and services to our fingertips, and how do we integrate that inherently is digital? How that comes across, the future will tell, but it goes into augmenting our existing senses, whether it's visual, auditory, scent, taste, touch. I think those kind of senses in whatever shape or form that translates into a digital twin. I think that's where we would expect a lot of future growth.
So you think that with the metaverse in itself, right, there will be this integration of course, the mixed realities, right? This is what they're talking about. And right now, mixed realities will only be like haptic feedback, your eyes, and what your mind is able to do. You really think that flavors are going to come into play one of these days?
Well, it's already there.
Oh,
right?
Really?
The initial technologies are there to do both olfactory, so scent, and I think scent is more advanced than taste. And the taste component comes with this slightly awkward.
Yeah, something has to shoot into your mouth while you're doing something.
Or you need to lick something, which is just very counterintuitive. Like licking the microphone here wouldn't come natural. Smelling the microphone is a little bit more intuitive.
You could if you wanted to, but don't suggest it though.
Exactly. But that's where, again, depending on the experiences, it's almost like a hierarchy of needs, right? Scent is more strong in driving connotations, experiences, and memories than taste is. If you're playing, for example, a game, Fortnite, or if you're doing a new wellness experience for relaxation and you have your AR/VR headset on, so that goes from imagery to relaxing sounds. But at the same time, you can also recreate the smell of the ocean to really relax and get into the moment or the ocean. Or if you're doing a shoot 'em up Fortnite game, there's headsets available that can simulate the smell of blood or mud or whatever have you. So that is technically possible, right? So in that space, we can argue whether it should be taste and smell and everything else. The point being that technically it becomes possible. So today, and imagine where we're going to be in 10, 15 years from now. So augmenting of all of our senses beyond the services in itself, I think it's within reach.
I love to ask this question for people whenever I talk to them about metaverse. As simply as possible, and in the least words as possible. Could you please explain metaverse?
For me, a metaverse is a digitally enabled space where we create experiences, whether it's visual or otherwise, where we do transactions, where we interact in a space that is 100% digitally enabled, but where at each point of these transactions and interactions, there is a connection back to the physical world.
We need to write a children's book to explain metaverse to kids. I wonder how that would go. This is the metaverse. It's not there, but it's actually there.
I might get more simple in my explanations after a few beers, so maybe we try that and bring the inner child out and write that.
That's going to be round 2. I think we should do one another time with the beers. That's always so fun, but that I have no idea what the agenda would be on that, or what the scope of that discussion will be. In fact, we should do a beer tasting one of these days and just go for it. Why not?
It's chemistry after all.
It is, and that brings me to the next topic as well. I wanted to draw back to like there's this whole thing. You love using your hands. You love working with things, fiddling, meddling with things. How has chemistry eventually just led you down this path of innovation? I don't know, meddling with stuff. To my understanding, chemistry was just like putting 2 and 2 together, and all of a sudden you're making something. But again, please shed some wisdom on this dumb brain of mine.
No, but you're right. Chemistry is putting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 together, and you hope to see something different, right? So this started for me in the early days when I had access to chemicals in the lab, where I would support the teachers and the professors. This would start from the point where I knew that pharmacies would sell you things if you ask nicely. And as many boys my age, I had a train set at home, and the train set comes with a, how do you call that, an electrical regulator. And if you connect that regulator to your carbon rods in your pencil, then you have a tool that you can do electrolysis with. And all of a sudden I was doing stuff and creating new chemicals, and it was interesting. We had many different colors, maybe not the most healthy components, but it was interesting. And then you just go from one to the next, right? So if you then studying and you do proper organic and inorganic chemistry, it's a world of wonder. It's just amazing how that works. When I went into more biochemistry, my PhD is biomedical sciences. So in the years before, we were studying the biological processes in a human body. And that's chemical reactions, catalyzed and facilitated by very complex systems. But it's trying to see how changing one molecule in another at the end of the day creates life, and how these processes work. And that's quite often also the same process behind innovation. Innovation is not the creation of something new, because that's invention. Innovation is building with tools and Lego bricks that are available, but changing them and combining them in such a way that the combination is new and innovative. And what I also teach my students is innovation is not just the process of creating something new. Innovation is for the particular purpose of making it commercial, right? It's trying to sell things. Otherwise, if it's just creation for the sake of creation, then you might as just well be art. But innovation in a commercial setting is to be able to sell and create commercial value. And within that, it really means that you're tinkering with things, right? Like you said, I'd like to play with my fingers, but for the benefit of creating value, right? And that's where back in the days, my PhD work was intended to create value towards a therapeutic. And I wanted to see that, right? I wanted to see how my research could potentially lead to a better therapeutic outcome for a cancer patient, right? That's why after the initial research, I started to work with hospitals to get access to samples and really try to see how can we correlate the original fundamental work that we've done with an actual outcome. That's why in all of my corporate years, you try to get smiles on consumers' faces. The most exciting thing is when you learn to someone, you try to understand what is innovation and how can I make your life better. Go back to your lab, create something, work with your commercial departments to come up with a concept, with a visualization, with artwork, put that together and go back into the market to test that. And when consumers say like, you nailed it, that just gives you so much enjoy and so much energy back, because that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we tinker with our fingers.
Yeah, that became your eureka moment, right?
It is. And that becomes like a drug, right? It's like, I can drive change. I can do something. I can put one and two together and make somebody else smile.
It's so interesting that you're talking about like electrical components, when you were a kid, and now here you are developing and working with all sorts of other things. It's like it's as though you had your playground just expanded, in that sense. So I remember off air we were talking about your particular playground when you were younger as well. What drove that love for chemistry?
Fireworks.
Like all boys,
of course, things that go boom, right? And
is this one of those stories you go, oh, it was the 70s or it's the 80s, anything's possible?
Well, we were very small.
Children were expendable.
Well, maybe a few limbs and fingers were expendable.
That's how you got 10.
I still have all 10 on my feet and on my hands. But no, it like one of those moments that said like, yeah, I can do awesome stuff. It's literally fireworks. The easy things, like just mixing carbon with sodium permanganate and some sugar to create purple speckles.
You say this as though you could pick these up from 7-Eleven or a grocery store somewhere.
Well, back in the days, you kind of could.
Well, not here. We didn't get that stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, if it's so easily available, please carry on. Tell me more.
No, the combination between sulfur, pure sulfur I could get from a pharmacy, carbon, sugar, that's the first.
Sorry, where do you get carbon from? Who sells carbon? What, charcoal?
Yeah, charcoal. Just your barbecue bricks, right?
Okay.
If it's made from pure wood, you can pulverize that and then you've got carbon. You have activated carbon that you also can get from pharmacy, which is a detoxifying pill if you ate something.
Carbon tablets.
Right? You can use that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
there's
To dry out your stomach, right?
Yeah, there's many different sources that you can use from, depending on the purity you need and the texture of the particles, right? The finer it is, the better it becomes, right? And from that you start, and then you get, let me do different colors if I find this kind of ingredient. And if I do this, then you go a little bit more advanced, and it becomes more chemistry, right? When you're doing some advanced things that go boom, or if you actually make, the fireworks that could potentially shoot up with all sparkles and things. So yeah, that's where it came from. And then,
so how is it that you still had a house to live in? I would have expected you to burn the roof down by now.
that didn't happen. So I was happily outside. We had a big garden, so no need to do it inside of the house.
Oh my God.
The thing that I did inside the house was obviously cooking, right? So I told you off camera, so one of my other passions is not just chemistry and that kind of things, but it's also, cook and create. My very first cakes and stuff that I made, they were probably as rough as my fireworks, because you're just fine-tuning ingredients. You're getting to know balances, and some of them failed. Some of them, I'm sure my parents ate it with a smile, but it was actually maybe horrible. But I think over the years, you teach your brain to think in flavors, right? You think in techniques and flavors and combining things. And that's what I still do until today. So I find cooking as relaxing as driving a car as it is to work on some of the projects and just create.
Yeah, now you're scaring me, because Christmas is coming. If you send me a cake, I don't know whether it's really cake or there's an exploding cake now. I'm starting to worry.
Well, your t-shirt said the invincible Ironman, so whatever I send
wore this
should
for
be
you
fine.
because this is the only Ironman shirt I have.
I love it. I
have
love it.
no other Ironman shirt.
But you're invincible, so I can send you any cake.
Invincible doesn't mean you don't die.
You come back.
That's immortal. That's different. I just got hurt really badly. I'll come back, but I got hurt really badly. Then it's really cool because you're able to take all this knowledge. I don't know, somehow or other, the picture of Breaking Bad comes in. You could have sold drugs if you wanted to, like the purest meth ever, like Breaking Bad, right? Or you could have gone down the road of curing cancer in that sense. And I'm glad you chose the latter.
Exactly.
And I want to get your take on this as well. Did you ever realize of how these skills were going to be applied so laterally?
I didn't. So one of the things that I tell people, and they ask me, like, so how deliberate were you in planning your career?
Yeah. Were you how intentional were you on that?
Not at all. Not at all. I think there was no planning that came into this. And if I look in hindsight, then all the things that I did, they contributed and they developed me into the person that I am today. Mm-hmm. But if I transport myself to any timestamp in the past, looking forward, there wasn't exactly a planning that went to it. Going from choosing my university, I took the one that was closest to home. And then I just graduated more and more towards where I felt the biggest passion about, which was biochemistry, right? So that's how I ended up choosing biochemistry for my master's. I didn't choose my thesis subject. Professor asked me, you want to work on this? And I said, like, okay, looks interesting. Then afterwards he said, like, well, you did a good thesis. You want to stick around here for your PhD? I said, yeah, looks interesting. I did work hard at every single stage, because I did get a quite prestigious scholarship from the Flemish government to be able to do that. And that back in the days, that was defending my brain spins for my PhD in front of an industry. And that's something that I've carried forward quite a lot of times, and something just popped in my head. And it's like, I don't think I ever had a fear of failure, because I've always taken every opportunity that was presented to me as something that I just had to do my best, make the best of it. If it doesn't work out, I can change. But every chance for every assignment is an opportunity to do better. And once you've done it better and you've done it to the best of your ability, you'll see that magic happens, because doors open. All of a sudden, you've created a different extension for your career path that just wasn't predictable, because you had to do the work first. You had to study it first. You had to create something first to be able to see different opportunities. And that's why I say, it's like, well, you can only forecast so much into the future for your career. You can only walk that part of the path that is visible, but through the fog, through all things that ever change, you just can't see what other options might be there. And the one that you can see, that's a really great one, but it's probably not the only one. So why choose it until you at least see multiple options and then choose the one that you feel most passionate about at that particular point in time? So whenever I talk to students or even experienced professionals, when they ask me, oh, what should I do next? It's like, I cannot advise you what you should do next, because that's what your heart and your mind should tell you. But what I've always done is I've always chosen the option that was driving my excitement, that was driving my next, what can I do with my fingers, what can I create? And I went down the path of where I think I would have most fun and can make the biggest contribution. That's how I ended up leaving cancer research behind to go make laundry detergent with Procter & Gamble. That's how I left at some point an amazing place, Procter & Gamble, behind to go for an industry where I had zero subject matter expertise and leave a place of relative comfort to go in complete discomfort. And every single step that's been similar, like, where do I go next? What does my heart tell me? What does my mind tell me? Where am I going to have fun? Where can I learn and where can I create?
And there was no doubt that even in those moments of, or at least you know that you're venturing into a place of discomfort, right? Which is the unknown, but yet you still felt that it was more important to go there.
Exactly. And I must admit, there was great feeling of discomfort, but there was never a sense of fear. It was always this ability to calm yourself down, rationalize that this is something new. I have work to do. I'll have to study. I'll need to lean on people. I need to go find connections. But it was a place of discomfort with the level of trust in myself that I will be able to figure it out. And that's sometimes very hard for people to deal with, right? The I'll figure it out kind of thing. Having enough trust in your own abilities to go from a place where you're uncomfortable and you don't master a part or anything at all, but create that along the way and create the place of more comfort for you. And as soon as you've reached a new place or a new peak of comfort, change it up again and go to the next place of discomfort and continue to grow your career, your passion, whatever it is you want to achieve in life, that particular way.
Now, fast forward to today. You're in a very prominent position as a mentor in the accelerator programs, right? And you're helping to incubate, grow, and enter into the market. With all the business trends that you're actually seeing, businesses are always going, yeah, we're going to follow this trend, but yet they still get it wrong. What exactly are they doing wrong if they're following a trend? Why can't they succeed?
Trend is a trend because it's an assumption of what's going to happen moving forward. And trends are alive, right? Trends affect each other. There is trends that are obscured by other things. Sometimes we're staring ourselves to death at something that we would love to believe is true. Sometimes we cannot take a step back, look at the big picture first, and see what is impacting the bigger scheme of things. And things can go wrong for many different reasons, but things can also succeed for many unexpected reasons. So whenever we do our trends work, we tend to look big picture. We tend to look far out, and then work our way back. We always say, look, if something urgent and imminent happens, we need to respond to something that could be a cause of death, like right away. Right? If you're having a heart attack, obviously you're not going to plan for retirement. You need to get that under control first. Mm-hmm. But if you're, call it, sailing plain waters, that's actually a good time to think like, if I'm going to build a ship, what kind of ship do I want in the first place? And what do I want to do with it? And to be able to do that, what needs to be true? But also, what is my direction, right? What stormy waters might I encounter? What are the different people that I want to have on my ship? And it's really trying to really picture what that future looks like. Look at all the potential trends that are there. Not only look at trends, but also look at the factual data points and try to work with that. And don't stare yourself to death on a fixed object, because if this were my solution, the future is dynamic and the cup will continue to move and I'll need to move with it. And sometimes you need to move and pivot because your understanding of your solution or product market fit or technology problem fit isn't exactly there, and hence you need to switch it. But even if you have a very good fit, that fit might change simply because the environment changes. Regulatory, political, environmental, consumer habits, whatever have you, things change and evolve all the time, right? And what you thought was the right fit at some point may not be next year or the year after. And that is not necessarily failure by design or failure because you made a miscalculation at the moment you made it. Sometimes it's simply a miscalculation because you didn't stay on top of something that was alive. And failure to change and failure to grow with it sometimes leads to failure of what you were doing.
That's true. You grow, adapt, or die, right? Now, in larger companies, larger corporations, multinationals, do they have a role that actually looks into all of this?
Different organizations are structured differently, right? So you have people that look at early stage, mid stage, and you've got the people that look at strategic foresight.
Right.
The intent is to indeed amalgamate all these different insights and come up with a short, mid, and longer term trajectory to do that.
Right, and that's the thing. The larger companies, I believe that they're afforded. They're definitely afforded, right, that luxury of having such positions created or opened. But for smaller and medium ones, I don't think they do. And they're the ones who actually have to struggle through this. So what can they do, in your point of view, get such information or get on top of things?
Well, the easiest thing is to read, right? And to be in touch of news, get a couple of newsletters that keep you in touch with what technology is doing, where economic trends are going, where consumer trends are going. There's very useful newsletters. There is one that I follow. It's called TLDR. TLDR means too long, did not read, right? And they figured out how they can feed you in very short snippets a view on the world, right? So you don't have to read the entire newspaper for a couple of hours, but just get exposed to what's moving. Educating yourself, participating in certain forums gives you a wider view on the industry. I think I've always been good at what I do because I wasn't too focused on a particular subject. Keeping a wide view on the world and having different experiences across industries gives you the opportunity to see trends when they're moving outside of your radar screen, but eventually might end up in your radar screen. Right. The other thing that companies, big and small, or very small, can do is work with mentors, right? Occasionally have an advisory to come in, participate in forums, and get perspective, a different perspective, people that disagree with you, right? Get people to argue an argument with you and gives you a different point of view on what might potentially happen. You'll still decide what you take on board and what you don't, right? You're still the master of your own business and your own future and your vision. But sometimes you might feel more confident about the path you're on if you see in a different perspective that kind of affirms where you are. But sometimes you're just grateful that somebody actually gave you a different perspective, because more options gives you more confidence in the choices you're making. You don't need an endless set of choices because then you end up in paralysis by analysis. But if you have different perspectives and making sure that there are different paths, then at least you can choose, right? So, and that's where mentors, advisors, or agencies and consultants can help in creating an independent view on the future that is rooted in your business.
Need help? Call Bert. With all the information that you get, all the knowledge that you have you ever been mired in your own opinion?
Have I been what?
Mired. That means got stuck. Basically, because you basically with so much information that you receive, yet you have to fight that subscription to an opinion or your own opinion. You know, do you ever get stuck in that position whereby you're in that dilemma of, is this really okay, and am I being too defensive?
I think that happens more often than I would admit, because you get exposed to a whole heap of information morning till evening, and there might be opposing data points, and there might be so much of it, and sometimes you're in this position where you have to admit, like, I don't know what to do with this. How do I make something that is structured out of something that seemingly is a heap of chaos? That's where I go for a run. That's where I go for a bike. I tend to dissociate myself for a while from that particular challenge that I'm facing. Try to think about something else. right? Try to get your blood flowing, try to get your energy back up. And it's amazing how, at least for me, my brain works, that after a moment of reflection, after a moment of, call it mental meandering, you go back and you see patterns in a different way. And as soon as I start seeing patterns, then you start this mental exercise of testing hypothesis. Well, if this is a pattern, then what would be true? And what are pros and cons of that? Then you build scenarios around the patterns that you see. And all of a sudden, you then see different paths forward. And the objective is not for me to come up with the right answer. The objective is for me to create scenarios I can engage other people with. And they will have a discussion with me. They might disagree with me, but that's exactly the point. Because all of a sudden, you're not in a state of perplexed. You're in a state of engaging with other people, and you can start doing trial and error on your intellectual hypothesis to make it better. All of a sudden, you've got data points that you can do additional research around to either corroborate or refute what you were thinking. But it becomes, from a very chaotic state, it becomes a very constructive state, because you've created something that is almost like the original crystal that further developed into the diamond. But the diamond wouldn't develop if you didn't have this initial opportunity. Right, and that's what I always try to do in the most complex of environments, in the most complex of projects, or the most of complex business needs. It's trying to find what are these initial crystals that we can find, develop them, grow them, refute them, or corroborate them, and build bigger scenarios out of them. My objective or my goal is to create the first step that I can start pulling from, and the path will reveal itself. And if you reframe your own challenge by looking not at the big picture and I have to fix everything, but actually the first thing that I need to do is fix the first step.
But yeah, do you actually, around your office, do you actually take afternoon runs?
Well, there's a rower right here, so you can use that.
That is true.
And occasionally, if I can do anything, and I've been sitting for a long time, sometime, like a few weeks ago, one of the ladies in the office here is like, "What's that noise?" And then they figured out that it was me on the rower. It's like, nobody ever uses that. And it's like, well, if I have 5 minutes between meetings to get my blood flowing, to get my mind out of all the data and the things, and it just helps, right? And stay fit a bit.
Oh my God. I love to also do a very quick questionnaire, closer to the end of the podcast, just to end it off. And it's a very quick 10-question rapid fire thing that our listeners can get real good insight into who you are. So, Bert, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right. So, here with the epic questionnaire is Bert. First question, one word that you really, really love.
Passion.
One word that you truly dislike.
Indifferent.
If you could have a conversation with somebody, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would that be?
Iron Man.
Okay. Tony Stark or Iron Man? Different.
Tony Stark is the human being. I would love to meet the real Iron Man, the reincarnation, or Superman for that matter.
Interesting. What do you say to yourself in the mirror every morning?
You can do it.
If you had one superpower, what could it be?
Make the world a better place in a more deliberate way.
Okay. Sounds quite generic, but powerful nonetheless. But that could also mean the Thanos snap. By eradicating half the humans on the planet, you save the Earth.
Exactly. When I snapped my fingers, we didn't know what happened.
Well, okay. You didn't hear it from me. All right. Favorite dish to eat?
Ooh, I don't have such thing. I love the diversity of food. If you have to pick anything, in the shell barbecued durian.
Barbecued durian in the shell.
If you never had barbecued durian...
Dude, you're putting me to shame because I love durian, but I've never had barbecued durian in the shell.
Oh, man. That chemistry of the caramelization, the Maillard reaction of barbecued durian, that is whole new level.
So it's like caramelized onions.
But smellier.
Okay, I'll take it. I'm going to try that one of these days. Favorite travel spot?
Favorite travel spot?
Or the next one you want to go to?
Wherever I will be with my wife.
And that will be?
Bustleton, Margaret River. Australia.
Ooh, okay, interesting. Something in the arts that you've always wanted to do, but yet to do so.
In the arts? Well, as a kid, I played the flute. So there is a little bit of an artsy side to it. But I would love to bring it back as an adult and do it at a much deeper level when I understand the emotion behind art.
Interesting. Okay, what does retirement look like to you?
It's non-existent. No, it's a cliche, right? Because they always say, when you do what you love, you don't work in any other day, right? And I had a conversation actually with a client the other day, and we talked about reframing of retirement. And retirement has always been this point in time where a certain life stage stops and another stage starts that you needed that initial stage to save up for, to then do something that most of the people in my old days understanding of retirement actually don't like anyway, because it's more about stopping than it is about doing and starting. Whereas for me, retirement is non-existent because I see a continuum in the experiences that I'm having. Like, I wouldn't describe today that I'm at work, right? I'm in a stage where I'm applying, I'm learning, I'm doing what I love, I'm trying to create a difference, and I don't see myself ever stop doing that. So by definition, I would never retire. We just continue to find ways to make change.
Very insightful. Last question. What is your legacy? How do you want to be remembered?
Maybe, I don't know, the guy that was always there to help, the guy that made other people see and realize how they could reach their own parts in their passion. Whenever a student comes to me and they say, like, thanks so much for sharing your journey, I see my own path better now, I think that's enough for me. I'm here to create change. Over lunch with someone, I was saying, it's like, look, I set up shop here in Singapore because I just want to create difference. I want to create opportunities. And if people feel like I've made a meaningful difference in their own life, whether it's personal or professional, then that's enough. And if I can do that with a lot of people, then I think I lived a life worth living.
Well, you definitely made a difference to me. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. If anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they hit you up?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn. You can quite easily find me there. And if you put my name in Google, then you'll probably end up on your podcast.
I hope so. It means I'm getting more famous.
We'll get there, but LinkedIn probably easier, or for the company website. Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, Bert. And thank you all so much for listening. And we're going to see you the next time. I'm going to leave the link to his LinkedIn in the video or in the description below. If you're listening, go check out Bert, B-E-R-T, Grobben, G-R-O-B-B-E-N. All right. And if you can find him, I hope you find him and get in touch, because as you can hear or you've heard already, the insights are amazing. It's so patient, so caring, I have to say. And even though he's got the mind of a chemist, he's still very much a saint to me. Okay. So I have no idea what that means. All right. But anyway, whatever the case is, we'll see you next time on the Epic Podcast. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. That was good.